So I'm going to start today's episode with a pretty good example of light piping with Inferno. And you can see this guy's eyes are like an Inferno. I mean, they are. Look at his eyes. Now, of course, I've got light just kind of, he's right underneath a really bright light. And these little wings he's got here are actually mod. So he had holes up on his shoulders. I don't know, that might be part of, I think, the transformation mode or something. And so somebody either printed or resin printed these perfect little wings for him. Which, he's got little wings in the show. So I picked this Inferno because I didn't want an identical model being grapple. So I have the newer grapple, and then I had a different grapple that also had some 3D printed upgrades, and I gave that to my son. So he has the grapple that's made from the same body as this Inferno figure, and then I'm using the newer grapple, the one that I showed two episodes ago, that has all of the different little upgrades. And hopefully this is a good example of why I really love light piping. And with this back drop, you can see how quick that just, then you can see that's from, with some light that's enough to get into the plastic behind his head and just really, really adds to that effect. Now when I put him on the on my little backdrop, the light piping is probably not going to reach him very well. So, well, I don't know, it might. But we'll see here in a second. So we can see that if there is any light piping now, it's very subtle. And as it is with these figures, a lot of times it's, even with nice bright light around them, you really have to make sure that the light is focused just right, or you're going to kind of miss the light piping. And so, if I'm going to use this character for animation, I'm going to have to direct light to the back of his head when I decide to do that. Now, of course, I could also use like a digital paint program that handles the file formats I use, and go in there and just draw the coloring over his eyes. That's not out of my I've done it before, and it's not something, out of my range of capabilities. But he's a good figure. I like him a lot. I don't know if he's transformed exactly right. I think I might have pushed his abdomen up a little bit here. Yeah, there we go. I think, oh, maybe not. Actually, I think that flops down kind of to, and he has ankle tilt. And I've been noticing lately, as I go through some of these slightly older figures, that, it wasn't something that's really, just exclusive to the most recent figures that are kind of competing with masterpiece designs, only, being more simple. So as I bring him closer here, we can see that the light piping is kind of catching up a little. As much as I can get that light focused back there behind him, I can get the slightest hint. And I really love this upgrade. It makes him, a lot more G1 looking. He's got really great transform mode. And so yeah, he's great. I couldn't imagine wanting or needing a different Inferno figure. I think he really does perfect. His face is great, and the transform mode is very accurate. So he's good. I like him a lot. But the mod is, of course, the little kind of parts that look almost like little angel wings popping up here. And I mean, I really couldn't imagine a better figure to have, kind of endorse an angelic posture as he's, a fire engine. He's saving people's lives and stuff. And, he's a good guy, so I guess that kind of fits. But it does. It looks like little wings popping up. And I think that's maybe the only mod. Of course, when I bought this figure, I think the guy who owned it, must have really been a lot like me. He painted parts of this figure to add to the details. So the arm there has been painted, and the shoulder. Those I'm pretty sure were done by the person who was selling this. I think I bought them off eBay. So yeah, when I saw that, I said, "Oh man, I got to get that," because that's just the extra detailing, is priceless. So yeah, I love it. I love it when fans will go that far. I do it when I can, and it just helps. It really makes it, especially when you're going to do animation. The extra detail helps. I think of maybe somebody seeing my work and then going, "Oh, I have that toy," and then when they look at the toy, they go, "Oh, but it's not really exactly the same." And maybe I'll have a different head sculpt or extra paint apps or little modifications that will push it just a little bit higher up than just your packaged figure, even though a lot of the figures I use really are just straight out of the package. But as I said in the last episode, this time I'm going to be talking about a lot of different things. I'm going to deal with some mods here, but also some more Fembots, some gestalts Fembots, and other things like that. And here we have the newer Snapdragon. I think that's who this guy is, yeah. And he's had a gap filler upgrade. He's such a cool character. He's a headmaster figure. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, this figure has some cool little details about him. Yeah, I think he's actually a really cool figure. You can see some translucent parts on the leg there with kind of a cockpit, and I think the figure fits in there. Hope I'm right about this guy. But so the gap filler is on the inside of the leg here. I can get this to focus. There we go. The inside of the leg has been gap filled here, right there. And that was an empty space. And I think there might be one or two other gap fillers, but I think I got a set of several gap filler upgrade components. And this guy too, just like with Grapple, he really does kind of seem like the part is so perfect that it may have been designed with the figure. I really think sometimes that's the deal. Now if I turn his leg and we can get a good look at it, it's more because the details line up so perfectly. So yeah, and I think there's another mod kit that's a little more advanced for Snapdragon that makes it so you don't need the headmaster. I think. I'm pretty sure it excludes the headmaster. So yeah, he's cool. And these more creative Decepticons, I think, really add flair because they're not just copies. And he even has some ankle tilt you can see here. As one of my arguments, not really arguments, but one of my suggestions based on experience that with my son is that I believe that a good animator can actually take something static, like maybe a little plastic cat toy with zero articulation, or a toy with no moving parts, and then bring it to life using animation. And so based on that kind of argument, I kind of was You know, endorsing that you don't need ankle tilt, and especially silly things like hip thrust and all these extra articulations to make a figure really look good in animation. Although it does help, of course, especially if you're using more fixed imagery, dynamic poses in your animation. But for instance, with running. If I want to do a faraway shot in animation of a character running, and I've got, maybe I've got him turned like this, and I've moved back my camera, and I'm looking at his whole body. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun because I have to move his legs. Every step of running has to be accounted for, right? But suppose instead of doing that, I have the character close to the camera like this. And then every phase of picture is going to be like this, where I'm taking pictures of the character moving like this. And then maybe I can have parts of the background look as though they're moving past the character. Now I don't have to move the legs, I don't need ankle tilt, I don't need dynamic posing or anything like that. And it's going to look like he's running. So, and it might even look better to the viewer because the character's really close up into the camera while they're moving. It might actually be more dynamic to the viewer, even though, as far as the form that you're dealing with, of course, it's more dynamic to move every part and to see every part of the body as it's moving. But that might not actually be what looks the best when you're trying to make a beautiful picture that's actually moving and drawing in the viewer. So it's easier for me. It would be much, much easier, to maybe have an arm up, have the arms up like this, and then I've got his legs down here, and then as he's running, he's going like this. He's turning back and forth, and then I can have perhaps a static background object. Whatever it is, it can be another robot, it can be anything. Maybe he's running past Inferno, and then I would just be moving Inferno away from the camera as I'm doing that back and forth animation. And what that's going to do is give the appearance that Snapdragon's running away, and then Inferno is going further away, and I didn't have to move feet, I didn't have to move legs or anything like that. So again, for a person buying this for posing on a shelf, sure, ankle tilt, it might just be the greatest thing that ever existed. But for an animator, it requires me to be more creative, to not have all of those points of articulation. Not that I don't want them, but I don't need them. So on that note, some of my figures that I use in animation are G1. Like I have a bunch of G1 Seekers, and I took parts and swapped them around, made some custom Seekers that aren't really seen. And I also have some of the Chug style Seekers mixed in with some of the newer Seekers. I have a pretty good mix of them. Like I have the newer Starscream, but I'm not interested in every single figure that I have being just the most articulated that I can possibly get. I don't really think that's necessary. Now we've got what is this, Trailbreaker, I think? Okay. Or Hoist? Is this one Hoist? Wow, I just had a brain fart. So yeah, this guy is upgraded, and this kit is another one where I really feel like it looks like it was made for this character before. It doesn't seem to me like this upgrade kit was made 3D printed later, and it looks okay but not quite right. This one looks absolutely perfect. Like that's this on his right arm sticking out. That gap filler is part of the upgrade kit. He has one here. I'll try to get in a little bit closer here and pose his arm out. But if you look, doesn't that just look 100% perfect. Like, it just totally belongs there. It was always there. He also has a gap filler right next to it in what would be an empty space on his bicep area. Okay. He has a leg gap filler right there. A perfect gap filler. Totally 100% perfect. Looks like it belongs there. Looks like it was always part of the figure on both sides. So yeah, he has he is greatly improved by these gap fillers. The figure is he's much better with the gap fillers, even though he's a pretty good looking figure to begin with. Very articulated. I love the face, the head sculpt. The eyes are really bright and nice paint job. But yeah, that gap filler with him, phew, it really just is so perfect that it's just hard to think that that's kind of by accident. It looks like it really was planned. It's so perfect that it's just like, see if I can't get it to focus here. There we go. Yeah, see it? The lines on the front of the leg match the lines on the gap filler so perfectly that it's just there. It's like that. It looks like it was always part of that figure, and it really does. With him, Grapple, and quite a few other ones that I have, it is like, hey, they came up with this. And like I said, maybe to cut back on assembly cost, assembly time, cost of the overall figure per unit, quality control measures, and all of those things coming into play, and they say, we're just going to put these in a bag and sell them later. And so he might have been a $30 figure, and then I might have paid $15 or $20 for, and I think I got a set of upgrades that brought these out. So I also have Wheeljack, and he's got set an upgrade, and there are a couple of upgrades available for Wheeljack, but I think both of the upgrade sets include the gap filler for the inner leg. So kind of hard to see without a lot of light there, but he has an inner leg gap filler. Now I've seen some that I think might replace his little wings. I'm not sure. There are a couple, and I think that any of them, regardless of how complex they are, they come with the same parts. It's just more parts. So, there's his inner leg gap filler right there, and kind of hard to see because it's just so dark. And one thing they do, okay, for instance, if you look here, why didn't they fill in that gap? Because it's just totally, pronounced and ugly, and it's really deep. Well, because these gap fillers aren't just trying to fill gaps and look good, they're also trying to retain the complete functionality of the figure without having to manipulate any of those additional parts. So, that's probably something maybe easy to forget, is that this isn't just to fill gaps on a figure. It's to make it so they can still transform and pose and do all of the stuff you want them to do and still have the gap filler. So both of these figures are 100% functional. Transform, they don't have any limitations because of the modifications that you've done. They don't have any problems, anything like that. That you fill the gaps. Half the time you forget. I forget I even did it. I have to look through my figures and go, oh, did I do a gap filler on this figure? And look them over to even remember that I did. But when I look at them online, and sometimes I'll look through eBay or wherever to see how much these figures are going for, how rare they are now, maybe how hard it would be to get them, or if it's even worth it to try to sell maybe an extra one that I might have. And immediately, oh man, I definitely put gap fillers on that guy's because there's a giant gap in his leg or a big hole in his forearm or something. So for me, it's a pretty big deal. You got to really pay attention. And I think it's definitely worth it. When you do it, when you do these gap fillers, it's worth it. And so I'm not saying that, you know, you're not a great collector if you're not doing gap fillers, but from the perspective of someone that wants a figure to look as good as possible, especially for animation or for whatever type of reasons you might be displaying the figure, you're going to want to do that. Now, this one is an overhaul. It's more of an overhaul than a gap filler. This was a set that replaced several parts of this Ultra Magnus. His chest is actually different than what he came with. His semi-mode is different. So we're like, again, just like with some of these gestalts and stuff, it's really pushing the limits of the little set that I put up just to have some fun with this. But you know, he's really been upgraded. So what this upgrade did, okay, and this one is not a gap filler. Like I said, this is a pretty much a complete overhaul for this figure. Okay, see if I can get this. He's got a new semi-tractor trailer, a new chest piece, and the way it works now, the way it was before with this figure, is the semi-tractor trailer was attached, and it didn't transform or anything. It was just kind of like a lightweight little additional cab part, and it would stuff in him I think in the chest, and then it could pop right out. I think I put it away somewhere. I've got like the leftover bit somewhere. But what this does is it detaches that part, so you get the white Optimus Prime additional figure with him, more like the original. The original Ultra Magnus was a white Optimus Prime figure with an armor suit that went over him, and actually a helmet head that, if I remember correctly, went down over the original head. So it really was just like a battle armor white Optimus Prime figure. And then it's a car carrier. Now with this modification, you get kind of an additional bit of spacing on the inside of the car carrier. So you're going to get a little more use out of it. Plus it separates the car character from the cab, from the semi, and you get the Optimus Prime part of it. Okay, so that really helps a lot. So now we have the cab is out. You can see that the chest part has been lowered down. Now there's a spot inside the cab. Here, I'll put the chest back up so you can kind of see how that worked. It popped open. The cab fits down inside the upper part of the body. The legs spin around and then fold back. The front of the cab opens so that the Ultra Magnus head can fit down inside of it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was a knockoff or like a second version of this upgrade. I'm not 100% sure about this. This might be the actual legit one. I'd have to look up my information again. But so it comes with this cab, and it's kind of, you know, Optimus Prime, only white. And he's very posable. You can see the back has where his chest is going to have, you know, that. So that's a little silly, I guess. I mean, you can just kind of plainly see components for the robot form. So yeah, it's a pretty nice cab. The wheels roll, and then that would be pulling the car carrier part, would just lean right up. It's got a couple of little spots there for it to hook on. Okay, so now we've got that Optimus. that was inside. And I'm glad, that I can use this guy, and he's, different than whatever normal Optimus Prime I might use. I'd considered actually having this character wandering around in this form and just calling him Ultra Magnus and having him look like an Optimus Prime clone. And then, maybe when he goes to build Autobot City, or when he goes out to fight Six Shot or whoever, then he'll don this giant suit of car carrier armor to power himself up. So that seems like a pretty good idea to me. And this figure, he feels kind of like model kit plastic a little tiny bit. He's kind of lightweight, but he's extremely posable. Like, they did a great job putting all kinds of points of articulation all over him. Like, he's got knee bend and hip swivel, upper leg. The waist swivels, shoulders move a whole bunch. He's got elbows and wrists. Just a lot of total huge amount of posability for this figure. I mean, he really can do a lot. You can do a lot with him, and he's got ankle tilt. So yeah. So yeah, you can see he's got some ankle tilt going on there. Like I said earlier, I've noticed recently, as I'm looking over a lot of these figures, that a lot of them have ankle tilt, and I didn't know they did. And then some of them are older from before it was really being pushed a lot. Like, oh, this figure's got hip thrust, ankle tilt, and all these other cool things. Now, his arms, his hands can come off relatively easily, okay, and but he's also got just a huge amount of posability. So he's got a lot of potential. He's got a lot of potential for posing. He's got red eyes, which I think really look great. I thought that was pretty neat. I'm not 100% sure if, the original Ultra Magnus White Optimus Prime part had red eyes or not, but I think that's kind of a neat addition. I think maybe it did. I think there were a couple different versions when it came to the paint apps and stuff. They had kind of a less advanced, cheaper looking Ultra Magnus paint app for the car carrier armor, the head sculpt that went with that, the little mask part. So yeah, you could get a couple of varieties of that figure. But yeah, I really like this character. I'd love to use him in animation. I think he'd look great. And now we've got two great big monster mamas. This is Megatronia and Victorion. And I went ahead and put RC down there just to give kind of an idea of how big these are. Okay, now unlike most of the Combiner Wars or Unite Warriors figures, these two gestalt ladies came with good enough feet. So you didn't have to go out and get perfect effect feet because their feet were terrible. Their feet actually are big and well balanced and look pretty good considering. They are the same, except Victorion has a motorcycle chest piece that's exclusive, I think, to her. That kind of brings out her chest a little bit. And I think that can kind of pop off and everything, and you can use it. Actually, I think one of the legs kind of pulled down a little bit there now that I'm looking at it. And They both have the same swords, same accessories. You can see this sword is the Unite Warriors, Japanese. It's painted, but it does have that, you know, see-through blue. And then this one has the see-through blue with a blue and white paint app. Okay, we have a lot of color going on here. So where Victorion is all this kind of grayish, greenish looking plastic with red plastic, she's got some chrome paint points. Megatronia has a pink figure, a blue figure, a yellow figure, and another black and pink figure. And then the core, which I think is Mega Empress. She's, I don't know, I think in my animation she would be like second only to Megatron. She's like a girl Megatron kind of figure. So they're very similar though. As you can see, the legs are both kind of sports car looking vehicles. The bodies are the same. They're set up the same. Now I think you can change these figures around however you want. I think maybe just like with a lot of the Combiner Wars, you can have a figure be any part, I think. So maybe you could have the cars be up top or the helicopters, vice versa. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think maybe you can. And but this is the mode I think that it shows. So I guess if you're like flipping through instructions and you're figuring out how to do it, this is the end result you're going to get. But you can see she has kind of a crown. They both are, you know, just nearly identical to each other, but there are more varied colors and more paint apps to the Japanese figure. And last episode I said, you know, Victorion was fan made. This figure, fans came up with her, I think. And then, so they made her, and then they took the same mold exactly and did a Decepticon version of that character. And I think Victorion is possibly more available and slightly less expensive. And I think Megatronia is harder to get, much more expensive. She's kind of rare now, but the figures are great too. I just love it because, you know, you instantly get that much more females for your Decepticon team because they're sorely lacking in female characters. So yeah, and these are they're posable, they're highly posable, pretty good joints. The hands are nice. Megatronia's got they're the same hands, same feet, same everything, but of course Megatronia's paint apps, and I think the plastic, like the black plastic for her hands, seems like a little more solid and a little thicker, and I think that the gray plastic for Victorion's hands, I don't know if it's exactly the same. The feet really stand out with the paint apps. You get this kind of blank gray, just like with the hands on Victorion, and then you get black with your additional paint apps for the feet on Megatronia. So yeah, but yeah, having a girl sports car that's got the yellow paint app here, and then a black sports car with the pink accents there. We got a blue helicopter, and then a kind of pinkish helicopter, And then the main unit there, she's a truck, I think. If I remember correctly, she's a truck vehicle. Phew. Haven't played with these two in a while, so I guess I might be wrong about that one. Her eyes seem to really be glowing just from the paint. I mean, there's no light piping or anything, but from what I'm seeing here, at least on my viewfinder, is that her eyes are really kind of like fuzz glowing in a cool way. Now, the little shoulder parts can be kind of a nuisance. The parts that you can see there that are gray that kind of pop up and stick up there, they have to be folded down, and they're black on Megatronia. And Megatronia has kind of a bluish tint to the inside of her eye area, which kind of almost gives the appearance of a visor or something, but it's not. It's actually a creative kind of little paint app going on there. And as far as I know, other than, the Elita 1 kind of special gestalt, these are the only two female gestalts. The only two female combiner figures. And so in my story, I was thinking, well, how can I work this out where, you have these two kind of sister robots, and then one's a good guy, one's a bad guy. And I thought well, we could have it to where the Decepticons have their females form a combiner. They have, like female warriors. Maybe Megatron finds his long-lost girlfriend, second in command, Mega Empress. And then they form this Megatronia super gestalt. Then the Autobots scan her and steal her design, and then they take the minds of fallen female warriors and build Victorion. So then we have kind of an answer to Megatron's Megatronia with Victorion. And I think a story like that would just fit perfectly. That's how I would approach this, to try to come up with at least kind of an excuse for them being identical, just completely identical, other than the little motorcycle part. And Victorion being an additional 6 female Autobots really pushes the crowd of female Autobots you have. But, getting the extra female Decepticons really helps. You get to add that on. And I think it's okay, really, if you think about the kind of the subterfuge created by the two classes represented in the fiction, where you have a ruling warrior, overpowered kind of elite group, which are the Decepticons. I would call them Destrons, and then I would treat Decepticon like it's a negative term, like only the Autobots would call a Destron a Decepticon. Why would you want to be called deceptive? And so when I do animation, I think I'm going to have them call each other Destrons, and then have Autobots call them Decepticons, almost like it's a mean name to call them because they're deceptive. And then, of course, the Autobots are the working class. So then you have, just like in the real world, like when we say we're the 1% or the 2% or everything, that they say that 2% of the world has all the wealth but does none of the work, and then the other 98% has none of the wealth and does all the work. And so we have kind of that same type of thing where then there's that excuse for having a massive amount more Autobots and then only much, much less, but much more powerful Decepticons. And so you have to play that the way it fits. So you can't really have an Autobot that just, that's indefatigable compared to the other Decepticons. In fact, you would have to have that it takes several Autobots kind of teaming up and working together to even beat one Decepticon, because they're military, they're very powerful, and so that makes sense. Now, on that note, because that's not how some of the newer work that's been done with Transformers, and I'm just going to say it right out, probably gonna be an unpopular opinion, which I seem to be really good at that. I don't like any of the new movies. Okay, I don't like them. When I first saw, I guess what do they call it, the Bayverse or Junk Pile Transformers, I was just kind of taken aback. I found it hard to focus on the robots. So I totally understood that moniker, Junk Pile Transformers, because when you see them moving and fighting and stuff, it really does look like a giant swirling pile of junk kind of smashing into another giant swirling pile of junk. So I don't like the stories. I don't like the action, that it's just, only action oriented. I don't like much about it. I thought that Shia LaBeouf was cool. It's neat they had Mega Fox in there. She was cool. But I hated how they portrayed Megatron. Like he was just this mindless kind of bestial, explosive personality when the real Megatron is more calculating and cold and kind of like strategic, even to a fault. But I think that they messed it up really, really bad. And I can sit and watch them, and I can tolerate them, but I don't like the toys. I don't like the movies. I don't like the stories that they turned my favorite, or one of my favorite franchises into. I think that the Bumblebee movie was kind of okay, but when I watched the Bumblebee movie, at the end of it, I get this feeling like the girl that's the main character in the movie is psychotic, and that really that's all that the movie is a girl is seeing these things and they're not really there. And try to watch that movie. Try to watch Bumblebee and just have that sit in the back of your head while you're watching it. This girl's psychotic. And then the movie's fine. The movie totally works out fine from beginning to end, and there's no reason at all to believe it. So, this new Beast War thing coming out, that they've got coming out, whatever. They're going to have more G1 kind of representations. They're having a different person control it, and I think that's a really good idea. But honestly, I don't like any of it. I tried to like it. I tried to get into it, and I had some of the toys and all that stuff, and I sold them all. I made a big lot of all those toys, and I either, gave some of them to my son, or I just sold them because I don't like anything about it. I think it ruined it. Now, for me, being an awesome child of the 80s, I love G1. And as far as I'm concerned, G1 is the real deal. And then when you try to get into the other representations, I can't get into them. So I couldn't get into G2 very much, even though I could tolerate it. But Beast Wars was right out. That was when my love affair for Transformers dwindled, and it took a while for it to kind of resurface. I just didn't really get much into it. I really didn't. And I think that Beast Wars was not very good. Personally, that's what I think. Of course, I was, like I said, awesome child of the 80s. And so G1 is my thing. I love G1. I love everything to do with it. Now, when I found out later and watched the Japanese cartoons, found out later about them, I watched Victory, and I absolutely loved Victory. It seemed like a good next step from G1. It really did. It felt like this is G1. I liked Super God Master Force, but when you watch it and you realize what's going on, it feels like you can just completely forget it ever existed, and it's totally fine. Because there are essentially no Transformers in Super God Master Force at all. They're all like the kid-controlled robot Gundam kind of things. They have a bit of a spirit about them, but the children control them and drive them, and their spirit is kind of given off. They're the mind of those robots. So yeah, it looks like Optimus Prime, but it's actually like whatever they call him, God Convoy or something crazy like that. So I can't look at that and say I've got to have that as part of the canon. Even I like it better than Beast Wars though. I can't watch Beast Wars. I thought the games sucked. I thought the toys sucked. I thought the show really sucked. So Beast Wars was never a thing for me. A lot of the other shows I didn't really like, and I kind of skipped over them, like Armada or Energon. I liked the animated series, and it kind of reminded me of how much I loved G1 Transformers, and we kind of got into it. I got the toys and got into it a little bit, but then kind of the animation look kind of wore off. It had kind of a stretchy, thin, cartoony look to it, and it wore off for me. And then I kind of fell off that and was like, not really into it very much. So that's how I feel about those. Now, when they did the stuff with Diatlas, Z, I guess it was, or something like that, I really liked it, but it was only a one episode effort. And I thought that the show with Diatlas and the rest of the characters was really, really good. It would have made an excellent G1 inspired kind of, again, another continuation past Victory. Very advanced. And I loved the story. I thought it was a great story. But I didn't like a lot of the filler, the in-between stuff between G1 and Victory. Most of it just kind of bleh. I didn't really like much of it. Loved G1, loved the movie, loved Victory, tolerated Super God Master Force. I thought there were positive things in Energon and some of the other ones around that time, like Armada, but nothing that really, kept my attention enough to where I was like, oh, that's a great thing. And then when Bayverse came out and they junk piled everything, oh man, it made me love G1 more. It made me love the comics. It made me love what it all was and what the Bayverse wasn't. And I thought the Bayverse was just, honestly, it was terrible. Really, I thought, where's the allspice and crap like it. It was terrible. It was just terrible. It really was. Like, I liked that they had Peter Cullen. I liked that they did some of the voices, but I didn't like the bug-faced kind of robot look. I didn't like the junk pile look. I didn't like remote-controlled truck Decepticons humping people's legs. I didn't like robots, peeing on things. It just was, ugh. I just didn't like it, honestly, at all. Okay, so now we have the component robots, female Decepticons that form Megatronia. So in the center, Mega Empress, like I said, she's kind of like I guess kind of like a female Megatron, really. Cool, great head sculpt. I'm trying to figure out what to do with her backpack. I'm going to have to look it up in the instructions. But, yeah, I love it. I love the paint job, love the face up. She's awesome. She's great. And the two legs here, on the right and left, we're looking at Flow Spade and Trick Diamond. And I noticed that they kind of took a lunar theme for some of the names. Okay, so we've got Flow Spade and Trick Diamond. And then the two arms, which are the helicopter girls here, we've got Luna Club and Moonheart. Okay. And so Victorion, the centerpiece, which in this case is Mega Empress, well, the center, the torso part of Victorion is actually named Pyra Magna. Her arms are Jump Stream and Dust Up. The legs are Storm Clash and Skyburst, and then that motorcycle chest plate, which is an exclusive for Victorion, is called Red Dust. So we've got two characters with dust in their name. Then we've got Storm Clash and Skyburst, which seem kind of, you know, weather related there. And then Pyra Magna, which, you know, that seems like fire. And then Magna also sounds a little bit like fire. Okay. So, you know, the names of these things, whew, boy. I guess it's better than Snow Job from G.I. Joe. I wonder how many moms got red-faced when their kids were like, I want a snow job. And it was like, what did you just say? Guy from G.I. Joe. Yeah, I want a snow job. Okay. But yeah, we've got fun names. And imagine the people having to come up with all these names. Like, you know, the most creative name, Optimus Prime. And then getting to try to come up with other names. Okay, what other names were? Oh, how about Bumblebee? That's great. That's just great. Now, and then, you know, something that you really bad don't want to happen with your sports car. Sideswipe. Yeah, you don't. The last thing in the whole universe you want to happen to your Lamborghini, your red Lamborghini, is Sideswipe. Because that was where, you know, you got hit in the side of the car. Okay. Red Alert, not a very creative name. Okay, it works, but maybe not the most creative name in the world. But they did a good job. They came up with creatives. It's better than better than Machine Robo, where you could really just attach Robo to the end of whatever the thing was. So really, the Machine Robo list of characters read out like Bike Robo, you know, it really was. Well, okay, Rod Drill was actually the name of Drill Robo. Okay, but Blue Jet and Rod Drill were exclusive kind of characters in the cartoon. The other guys were supporting cast. So all of the cars in Machine Robo are good guys, and the supporting cast of characters are in and out. You know, you see them here and there and everywhere, but the guys you see all the time are Rom, who's, and that's one thing great. I'm veering off here, sliding off topic here for a second though, but another great thing about Machine Robo is that, well, they have humanoids that don't transform into anything. They're just like people. They're the people of this world that they're in. But then you realize as you're watching this cartoon that all these people are robots. Everyone is like, is a mechanical being, no matter what. Even the ones that look like humans are mechanical beings. And so they're very advanced. They get attacked by a gestalt forming monster squad that make a robot called, and no joke, this is the name of the robot, Devil Satan 6. Okay, it's what they call it. And they have this leader that's a woman. I don't think they ever made a figure of her, but her name is, I've seen it pronounced two different ways. It's Diandra or Tarantula, kind of like tarantula. So she's like this evil monster, spidery kind of giant woman, and they're fighting against Rom and his sister. I think maybe her name's Raina, and she's super cute, pretty, and they're humanoid, but they're not humans. They're robots. Everyone in it are robots, and but Rom is this like super powerful human that can turn into Baiken Fu, which is the Japanese term would be, in our language, it would be Viking Fu. which would be like, I guess like the fighting style of a Viking or something like that. And he turns into two different forms. Rom turns into a blue form that's larger than him and can fight better. Then he turns into this ultimate form, Viking Fu, which is gigantic and is essentially invincible. And in the first couple episodes, you find out who he is and all this stuff. His dad dies. And then his dad's spirit communicates with him, and he gets all this power from him, and then goes and fights the evil monsters that harmed his father with the help of all of the different machine robos. So, their list of characters is, turbo robo, car robo, truck robo, bike robo, jet robo. Actually, just whatever they are, and then attach the word robo on the end. So the Transformers did do that one part right. They really had to have creative names, right? Like RC and Trailblazer, and and they seem more like kind of like code words for what they are. That's fine. That's cute and everything. And Optimus Prime, that's really creative. Alpha Trion, that's really great. Megatron. And I always thought, I won't say I always thought it, but I came up with, I came to the conclusion that Megatron is kind of like Metatron. Like, it's kind of like a English version of that angelic name of the voice of God. Like Metatron, Megatron are very similar sounding. And you have to be careful when you start to wonder where the sources for some of these names are, because they had Japanese influence in a lot of them. Now, so Galvatron, if you apply the rules of English, is actually Garbitron. And so he's garbage. He's made of garbage. The Junkions and Garbitron. Okay, so, but he's Galvatron, and then you think of, whatever, galvanizing something, whatever that's, how that might work into the word. It has a presence here, but then it has, if you twist it a little tiny bit, if you add that little English rule, L's or R's, and so on and so forth, you can kind of twist those things around. So we've got Mega Empress and her 4 component parts that help her build Megatronia. Now, I'm not going to tear apart Victorian right now. They look the same, they're just different colors, and the head sculpts are different. The head sculpts are slightly different for the characters for Victorion. I'm not going to tear Victorian apart right now. Maybe in a later episode or something. So we've seen her. Okay, now on to the subject that I spoke of last episode that I'd be addressing today. Humans and Transformers. Can a human have a relationship with a Transformer? Can they be in love or work together or stuff like that? Okay, well, we all know that there's obviously a relationship between, say, Megatron and Dr. Arkeville. Okay, they're not in love with each other, they're working together, and Dr. Arkeville is a mad scientist, genius kind of bad guy, and he's helping out Megatron. That's a relationship. We have Spike and Optimus, or Bumblebee. There are lots of characters. Chip, he's the wheelchair nerd, computer genius guy who's helping out the Transformers. We have several humans that are kind of, crossing paths with the Transformers, and they're either part of the team or not, or whatever. Like there's the scientist that invented Nightbird, and then the Decepticons came in and turned her into a Decepticon. Okay, so we of course there are a lot of different humans in it, and of course and Hasbro making this half-hour long toy commercials per episode integrated the G.I. Joe story with Transformer story to a degree. Okay, it's not like you're seeing G.I. Joe versus Cobra in a Transformers episode. You're not seeing Decepticons versus Autobots in a G.I. Joe episode, but they did, have crossovers, comics that I think related to crossovers, and the artwork and the teams and all of it was all from the same source. And, like for instance, Jem and the Holograms was Hasbro, and if you watch, I watched Jem. I have the DVD box set of all the episodes of Jem, which I think it's a amazing cartoon. Like in that case, unlike most of my other, how I feel about most of the other cartoons and toys, I usually side with the toys. I like the toys, and the cartoons, they're okay. But in this case, I actually think that the Jem and the Holograms cartoon is way, way better than the toys. Maybe not the latest toys that are super expensive and sought after and stuff. Those are amazing because they look exactly like the characters and they're super articulated and all that great stuff. But the original Jem toys, maybe not. I picked up one for my daughter because I got the box set and showed her the cartoon. She loved it. And so I got her a Jem doll, and the earrings still lit up. Okay, so I don't know if these people were smart enough to dig in that thing and swap batteries or whatever, but the Starlight little effect earrings of the Jem doll still worked. And I would think they probably didn't replace it, so we're talking about, 30 plus years of that toy's earrings still working. And maybe they swapped the batteries out. I don't know if that can even happen. But she has that. So if you watch Jem, you'll see the same drawings of the Transformers moving around, the car modes. They just threw them in there like, hey, we need a variety of cars for some of the backgrounds of the episodes in Jem. And they said, well, you're in luck. We just drew all these cars for our Transformers cartoon, so they let them use them. So you might see cars that were in Transformers, like Bumblebee or whatever, driving around in Jem. They're not going to transform, but they're those same drawings of the cars that were used. Now, in the case of G.I. Joe and Transformers, though, we have Marissa Fairborn, I guess is her name. And she is, I think, the daughter of two G.I. Joes. Maybe like Flint and Lady J, or Scarlet or something. I think it's Flint and Lady J. So she's part of the Space Force. So she's a legit crossover character between G.I. Joe and Transformers. And, when you first see her, she's hunting after a rogue pirate character who's human, and he's made dealings with Quintessons and Decepticons and stuff, and he's, a Han Solo scoundrel character that's in Transformers. And she stops him, and she's kind of naive, but apparently she is in love with Afterburner. And I guess later on they changed his name to Afterbreaker. I don't do the name change garbage. He's Afterburner. That's who he is. Okay, this is from my Computron character, and I had to actually look up how to properly transform the guy. I didn't want to break him, but and this is that box set that actually comes with a different Afterburner motorcycle that doesn't transform. I've got that sitting over somewhere. I'm not interested in using that. It's okay, but it doesn't really work well for her anyway. But she's posable, super articulated. She's more like the later edition, like whatever it was, G.I. Joe, Valor versus Venom, the newer, more new series of G.I. Joes that are the same size, articulated, but they're slightly different. So she's a little like them. And you can see she's a beautiful figure. Like, they really made her gorgeous. She's a good figure. Someone might say, why buy this figure? Well, so you can have a human character that can, hang out with and be part of the Transformers world. For an animator, it's hard because I get to try to make her look right. Now, but in the case of a Transformer who turns into a motorcycle, it's a little bit easier to believe. Mass shifting aside, I don't have so much of a hard time believing that his size is okay where it is for him to be around her. Okay, unlike someone like maybe Powerglide, who is either, mass shifting hilariously to become this giant, plane, and then the girl that is in love with him would be tiny. She'd be kind of tiny, but she's really not that tiny. Okay, so they like to play with that. Mass shifting, where Soundwave can be the size of a real tape player, but then he can kind of grow, where Megatron can turn into a gun that another Transformer can hold, where let's see, there are so many instances of it. In the movie, Astro Train transforms, and then he's a shuttle big enough to carry all of the Decepticons inside of him. Okay? There are so many instances of like mass shifting properties that one might just go ahead and assume that it's commonplace amongst the race of Transformers. They can mass shift. They can turn into things that are gigantic or small, and it's just part of them. They're not just mechanical stuff. Okay, like on the subject of Raoul, who is a car thief, and he meets up with what's his name, the Transformer that's really snobby sounding, and he's a blue Corvette with wings. Anyway, the big problem I had with that episode, which I think is just totally ridiculous and wrong, is that under the hood of this guy, they got the part right where it's not an engine. That's the problem the Bayverse had, was when Optimus Prime is transforming, you can plainly see like this, giant engine block twisting and spinning around in the transformation. Transformers don't have engines. Okay, it's like a shell, and then inside is the manipulated, twisted around robot body. Okay, there's no engine. You're not going to pop the hood of a Transformer and see a big block engine in there. Okay, maybe the alternators did that stuff because they were model cars, but for the most part, you're not going to pop the hood. So they got that part right. Okay, but in the case with Raoul, there is one wire, and if you clip it, all of a sudden that Transformer can't talk and can't transform. And I just thought that's just insane and wrong and stupid, right? Like really just more stupid than a lot of the stupid things that were happening in Transformers to begin with. It was just stupid. Like Transformers are so poorly designed that right under the hood of this Transformer is one wire where if you clip it, then, he can't do anything. He's just a car now. And I just thought, I understand they have to try to have a story catalyst kind of mechanism to work with. But, I don't know, he could have pulled a part out that looked alien mechanical, and it would have done, so much more for that episode than just clipping one hanging out black wire that's just hanging out there that disables this robot. Again, that's another human Transformer relationship between those two. Now, in this case, though, we're talking about love. There's the girl who loved Powerglide. There's Marissa and Afterburner, who I guess are in love with each other. Now we also have a couple of other instances of humans integrating with Transformers. And it's very odd, kind of rare, and distinctly Japanese. Okay, and that's the Kiss Player series. Okay, now in the Kiss Player series, this was a uniquely Japanese, it wouldn't fly anywhere else in the world. Okay, unless you're in some country where they really are, okay with some of this complete craziness, there's just no way the Kiss Player story could fly anywhere. Now, I bought all the Kiss Player sets. I think there might have been one set that I didn't buy, and it's the one with the girl that's a statue, and she comes with a tiny Otto Rupert figure. That's the only one I didn't get. I got all the other ones, though. I got the Optimus Prime one that comes with a blonde-haired Marissa, who's a surfer chick. That's part of the Kiss Player story. I got the Otto Rupert, who's a cop car that has a little girl that rides in the cop car that is holding up a barf bag because she's like about to toss her cookies because she's in this car that doesn't consider that she's a human that can't really handle the speeds and stuff that a transformer can move in. Now, in the story, and I'm just kind of loosely get into it a tiny bit because really you can look it up. Look it up on whatever, TF Wiki or whatever website will elaborate. It's a really twisted and intentionally perverse pairing of humans and robots where the girls like kiss the transformers and it makes them have power or come to life or something crazy like that. And it had something to do with like Galvatron. Galvatron's spirit like comes back to Earth and then infects everyone, and then these girls turn into Kiss players who can like somehow interact with the robots by kissing. I also got Hot Rod, okay, and he's got a girl with him that's eating like a rice dish. She's eating like a little, she's got like a one of those bamboo rice pots that they eat out of, and she's like eating from it. She's got a dragon lady dress on, and she's really pretty. And all the characters can ride inside of the the cars because they're alternators. They're well, there they were called Binaltech, but here they call them alternators, which were like model cars that turned into really cool looking robot modes. They were great. You know, if they would have done something closer to Binaltech alternators when they decided to do the live action movie, I think it would have been better than the crappy junk pile stuff that they ended up making. Okay. But Kiss players used the models from Alternator's Binaltech to create this side story. And they also did a cassette. They did a cassette theme. And they did a disc that came with it that if you understand Japanese, you're going to get it. And it's like a, radio show of what's going on. And it's kind of semi-popular, even though it was really wacky and fruity and perverse. But, and they come with little comic instruction things with each one that's got really great artwork. And it's, really cute and I guess kind of a little lolly look to it. And it's interesting. But at the same time, like I said, it would never fly. It could never fly in our country. It just wouldn't work at all. It would be impossible for that to be acceptable in any way in our country. But we do have human-robot interactions in Transformers. So I guess you could come up with something kind of silly like that for her to ride this bike. But even like this, it works better than the bike she came with, which doesn't transform, and it just kind of looks like a, I don't know, like tube, like an orange-ish kind of tube thing. Now, she holds the handlebars fine, and she's on it, much like kind of a bike, but yeah, the little windshield thing looks kind of silly. But yeah, I think they actually do kind of look good together. Like a pretty good couple. It's kind of a neat looking motorcycle. It's a cool idea. His transform mode's pretty good. I think Computron looks really great. My Computron is special. I got him, and he's actually parts from both the Unite Warriors and the Combiner Wars figures. So the guy I bought it from, he said in his little listing that he picked the ones that he liked the most. So I think it's mostly the Unite Warriors, but there are a couple thrown in there that are, I think Afterburner might be from Combiner Wars instead of Unite Warriors, which I think the Unite Warriors one might be a dark orange, maybe. either way, I'm really happy with it. And his feet are great. His hands are really good. But I thought this figure was a pretty good find. I like her a lot. I don't think it's a bad idea that they made her. It's, you know, the scale, of course, is very large. So yeah, just trying to deal with that much, much larger scale figure to try to integrate. And there are methods. So, you know, if I want to integrate a larger scale figure to make them look not so gigantic, well, there are all kinds of things you can do. You can go blue screen if you really want to. You could also just use perspective, and that's an easier way to deal with it. Perspective, like where a movie crew might use a model helicopter because they can't use a full-size helicopter, and you know, no one would be the wiser, because that's what they had to work with, and so that's what they used. And then everybody that saw it said, oh wow, that looks great. And then, you know, however many years later you find out that they were using a model for whatever. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And so a fixed perspective can actually make something look, you know, so if I do this, maybe put him right here, then he might not look, she might not look too big. You know, like she looks kind of far away. That might not be the greatest example of what I'm talking about, but I'm just kind of throwing something out there. So if I put him way, way up here like that, there we go. And then she's next to the motorcycle, so it all works out, you know, and he's not too gigantic. So yeah, just toying with perspective can help out a little bit if you're trying to mix these things together. It shouldn't be that, oh well, I can't do this now because, you know, this figure is too big or this one's too small. It's all a challenge, and you have to kind of be ready for that. And I've heard, you know, why get this? Why have that figure? Well, she's beautiful. She's an awesome, beautiful hero chick character from Transformers. So she has a place in it. She's actually in G1. So yeah, I think she definitely has a place in there. And she's one that actually is dealing with these robots in space, and it, you know, helps to kind of connect G.I. Joe and Transformers. So yeah, I'm glad I got her. I'm not regretting it. For the longest time, I had her sitting up on the shoulder of Computron on the afterburner arm part, like she's with her boyfriend or something like that. And here we have KISS players. Of course, when I picked these up, unlike the majority of my figures that I buy, I actually got these thinking these are probably going to be worth something someday. And I don't know if that was really correct or what, but I think they are collectible. And I guess long ago, when I first started doing Transformers animation, I considered that, you know, maybe the Vinyltech and the alternator line was really good for that, because the car modes are excellent and they just look more advanced. That was before the movies came out. That was before a lot of the stuff that's out now was available. So, but then I learned a lot of lessons in animation. For instance, when dealing with scale. With animation, at least the type I do, it's usually easier to go small, and that's because your backgrounds have to be big enough to work with your size of figures that you're using. So that's why I picked Chug scale instead of, say, Masterpiece or Alternators Vinyltech or something like that. That's why I'd be more likely to use smaller figures, because the backgrounds have to match. So you know, I have to, if I'm using masterpiece sized figures, then I have to have a really gigantic background for all that to fit in. The smaller characters, smaller backgrounds, so I can actually fit everything on a relatively small set when using chug sized characters or G1 sized characters. But when I bought this, I just thought, wow, that's cute and fruity, and it's going to be rare, and it's not going to fly anywhere else other than Japan. And that was a kind of a given. So what we have here are the main KISS players. There's one extra one that's this girl here that's on his arm. Only she's a full-size statue, like one of these anime girl statues. And then she has an auto rooper that's him, only it's really tiny, like a tiny little auto rooper. I don't have that one. And these came with a really excellent Crimzeek figure that I have put up on my shelf, who's one of my favorites. I have several representations of Crimzeek, different colors and stances and stuff, and he's one of my favorites because he's little and he looks especially spiky and kind of feisty. I plan on using Crimzeek as much as I can because he's just really fun. But these figures are kind of, you know, they're just all the way Japanese. They're as fruity Japanese as you can possibly get with your Transformers. The story is weird. I would recommend looking it up. I don't want to get into it too much because it really is, it's weird, and it's kind of I don't know, it's perverse. I wouldn't say that the story is even safe at all for kids or anything like that. So these are all kind of remakes. With Auto Rooper on the right, we get the body of the I guess that's a Mazda sports car, possibly. And this was Jazz or Meister. And he just has the lights, the emergency vehicle lights, and he's got a different head sculpt. And you can see that the girl character he's got there with him is about to barf in a barf bag that looks like it's already got some stuff in it. So she's throwing up. Okay, and then he's carrying her along. Here we have Hot Rod, or Hot Rodimus, or Rodimus, whatever you want to call him. And he's got his dragon lady dress girl with the pretty hair tie, and she's eating. She's not bothered, I guess, by the sportiness or the speed or whatever's going on. I think she's especially cute. I like the dress and everything. It's got kind of a, you know, really cute look to it there. Oh, it looks like she's also got kind of like a lock around her neck, it would appear, which I'm sure relates to the story. Now this Hot Rod has nerd goggles, and I pushed them up so we could see his eyes, but behind that little red helmet crown crest part of his head are some transparent yellow goggles that pop down over his eyes, and I think he came with a fishing pole to kind of go along with that. Okay, then so yeah, he's a good looking guy, and he's pretty much the same as the Hot Rod Vinyl Tech alternators that they made. Then we have Optimus, or in this case Convoy, and again Marissa, and she's a surfer chick in this incarnation of the story. So it comes with a surfboard that turns into a sword, and she actually comes with a second pair of legs. So you can take her little legs off at the rear there, where she's sitting. You can take those legs off and then put standing legs on her. And I think she has different arms too. So she's got extra parts. Now I put the headphones on Optimus Prime. Those are actually bot headphones. I thought those looked cool and they matched the color. So I'll go ahead and just kind of take those off real quick here. There we go. Now you've got your, and I just realized, hey, he's got yellow eyes. So that's the greatest thing ever. See if I can't get it to focus on that. Come on, camera. There we go. Took him a second, but he's got cool looking yellow eyes. And she's got a cross on her neck and a really punky looking little shirt, and she's wearing a swimsuit like she's ready to go surfing. Yep. Now they also came out with a cassette pack with a white Ravage character with kind of a, cross thing, like a emergency vehicle cross. Beautiful figure. I forget the names. I know that's Sundor, and that's I think that's Rosanna, another form of Rosanna, and because you can see she's got the little hearts on her shoulder like the female cassette bots. And so then that's Sundor. So this was the only way, without like sticker mods or paint mods, to get a legit Sundor figure for your collection. So you got to use him. And I love the gold glowing going on with the wings. It's blinging awesome. I love it. I love it. I love these cassette bots. I'm really glad I got them. I plan on using them in animation as much as I can. I like that the eyes are yellow. It's got kind of a blue chrome for the legs, blue chrome weapons. And that's gold, and it's got the shimmering kind of sticker design. And then she's got blue chrome. I really love it. And of course, all three of these fit in Blaster or Soundwave or your Masterpiece ones, because that's one thing that I thought was especially good with the Masterpiece cassettes, is that they made them the same size when they changed into cassette mode as the originals. So you can just, fill in. If you didn't want anything to do with Masterpiece toys, but you still had, G1 Soundwave, G1 Blaster, you can get one of those packs of all of them at once, or you can pick and choose which ones, and have much, much better cassette bots that can all, fit in them. They can fit in them fine. So this is the KISS players. Now, I'm not going to show off the boxes or the books or the CD or anything like that. These are the ones I have. I put them on shelves, and boy, I had to really brush a lot of dust off these before displaying them, because they were just covered in a nice coating of dust for how long they've sat on the shelves. But I think they're beautiful, and it was a really cute idea. And that's something I really like about the Japanese, is that they're very lighthearted. It's like we live in a world, in the Western world here, that just kind of embraces thought crime, kind of like an idea of thought crime. Like, if you're thinking of anything wrong, if there's anything going on in your head, you're not allowed to imagine anything, right? You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. If suppose I had a daydream about a mannequin coming to life and falling in love. Oh, it's kind of pushing it, right? Well, in Japan, I think that they embrace a clear divide between your dreams and imagination and reality, to the point where you can just kind of let your dreams and imagination exist in whatever form you might allow them to exist. And whereas in the rest of the world that would be forbidden and taboo and wrong and everything to go along with it, well, they're just, that's just what we've come up with. It's our imagination, it's our mind. And so that's where KISS players belongs, is in that more accepting, more varied and encompassing kind of Japanese world that is from their fruitful imagination. Whereas here, if you were to explain in detail what this story was about, it could only reside in like hentai comics or something that is, too twisted or too weird and pushing the boundaries of what the Western world would accept for entertainment. And I can appreciate that, from the Japanese perspective there, that they that's not going to bother them so much. And I know most of them, for the most part, they'd say, no, I'm not into that, or that's nothing. But then there's that small sliver, I guess maybe you call them otaku or otaku or whatever you want to call them. They're kids who are stuck in their little confines, and they live with a shrine that is dedicated to whatever their heart's set to, and they don't really want to get out of that zone. And that's a real world that exists there, and these things seem to be born from that. And you know, it's a different culture, such a really odd different culture, and we owe them for a lot of the stuff that we're into today. The stuff that comes over, like, oh goodness, you know, whatever you can come up with, Pokemon, Miku, Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, and then, you know, but really, really weird stuff. They have the weirdest stuff coming out. Gundam, you know, Robotech, Macross, Transformers, all of that, Machine Robo, Voltron, all the Go Line is what it was there, Dyrugger, so many things, you know, Orgus, you can just go through, you can name it. There are thousands and thousands of the most weird, twisted, you know, sci-fi and stuff. Like, they came up with Ghost in the Shell, which happened. You know, we're talking about a comic book that happened, you know, started happening when I was a teenager and grown up into an adult back in the 90s. And then it was about being hooked up to a network where everyone has a virtual representation, like an avatar. We're all communicating with each other. If you're not hooked up to the net, you can't exist in the modern world. And that is how we are today. You know, I mean, aside from being, you know, augmented like they are, we're not augmented, but, you know, we carry around a device. And that might as well be what they're referring to. It's, you know, the only difference is they plug it into the back of their neck, and then they see everything as though it's right there in their own mind, and they can communicate. But we're one tiny little sliver away from that depth of infiltration with the internet and the web and stuff. Back when, I think his name's Shiro Masamune, something like that, that when he came up with that masterpiece, Ghost in the Shell, that was still the most deep science fiction kind of stuff. Today, that might as well be a blueprint for tomorrow. That might as well just be telling you this is what's about to happen. So we owe Japanese for how deep and provocative and permeating their imagination allows them to be. And I think that the more twisted and what's harder or even impossible for us to accept in the Western world keeps us from that world. You know, we have a hard time. So just touching on it is where we could enjoy He-Man or Transformers or whatever like that. But they can go into that world of that powerful imagination and come up with these kind of things. So KISS players here might as well be forbidden. It might as well be something that we just wouldn't embrace, couldn't understand, we couldn't enjoy it. But it is on that subject that I spoke about in the last episode that I'd be talking about. Humans integrating with Transformers. Can humans love them? Can they integrate with them? And the KISS Players series is 2 or 3 steps further along, and it's not just a human that's in love with a robot. These characters are integral to the operation of these Transformers. They don't exist, as far as I know, without the KISS player characters to activate them, and that's woven into the story. So yeah. Okay, and then maybe the closest that we ever got to anything like the KISS players or the Japanese kind of stories would be The Girl Who Loved Powerglide. Okay, and this was a story we actually got in the West. They didn't bat it down. They didn't say it was too much. They didn't curse the notion, so to speak, of a girl loving a Transformer, which is what happened. Power Glide. If this girl falls in love with Power Glide, and I guess he flies her around or something, and God, I think she even like kisses him on the face in the cartoon. Yeah, she kisses him. Ooh, you know, it's nothing like Kiss Players, but so yeah, this is the figure. Maybe Richthofen, named after the Red Baron. And I think I may have painted that little figure up a little bit more to kind of get it a little better. I might go in there and even do more detail. But this is not how the scale was in the cartoon. In the cartoon, he was smaller and she was bigger, so it wasn't so much of a drastic difference. And this toy, if I'm right about this, I think they did something special with this toy. Let me see here. Got her back there. They made it so he has a heart. He's got his little chest flapped open up. And, yeah, let's see. It's kind of hard to see in there. There it is. But he has a little heart in his chest. Very difficult to see. But, yeah, it's in there. He's got a heart because of her, because she loves him. Yep. And so it's the girl who loved Power Glide, and that was a great episode. It was really good, and you know, it was just cute and fruity and campy and silly, but it was still really, really good. You know, she became part of the whole story. And it works. It works great. You know, I really love it. I love it when they do stuff like that, because not just does it give you really great stories, but you're human, I guess. So it's like, you know, that's a treat. It would be, you know, maybe kind of like where you find out that Queen Marlena is from Earth, and you're like, wait a minute, that means He-Man's half Earthling. It means He-Man's half human, or he's like us. Little touches like that. And this is kind of like that. It's showing that, you know, he can have that feeling, and it's because of a human. You know what I mean? So I think that was a really great episode. I would recommend, if you haven't watched much of the G1 series, watch The Girl Who Loved Power Glide. And we have the relationship that kind of started it all. Maybe the one thing they got right about the Bayverse movies was a really solid interpretation of Spike, or Witwicky, whatever you want to call him. I don't remember if you ever hear Witwicky in anything in the cartoon. I think in the comic book, of course, they called him that. They said Witwicky, I'm sure, in the first comics, where everything was very, very different. He was a blonde-haired kid. He, you know, was up against, they were up against, I think, Shockwave might have been kind of like Starscream. He was against Megatron. Maybe Soundwave, I think, was against Megatron. It was a different story. It was way, way different. I remember some of the comics covers and the artwork and stuff would show like Megatron's face have torn off, and he'd have like a giant skull in there. Like, where are they coming up with this? Like, he's a giant, and he's got like a human skull in there that's all being exposed. Now this is Faith Leader, by the way. This is the iGear Faith Leader, which was a shrunk down version of the Masterpiece Optimus Prime with an arguably better head sculpt, and I think some minor modifications to make him kind of work out better. Okay, and I got him for animation and stuff. I had another one that was based on, I think the 05 or 10, maybe the 10. It was based on the 10 model, and that was way better. A lot of metal parts and stuff, and it was a miniaturized, a smaller, like chug scale version of that Masterpiece when I gave it to my son. But I would recommend checking those out. But this is iGear Faith Leader, and he's got Spike up there, and I think that's a pretty solid size for Spike, even though that Spike was from a Masterpiece set, I think. If I look at the size of the windshield, and I think of kind of how big a windshield would be to a human, it's not that far off. I don't think it's really that wrong. And plus, it looks good. It's like, oh, he's sitting up there on Optimus Prime's shoulder. But yeah, I got this one off of eBay, and he's had some work done. I think someone painted his upper legs, and they painted his lower legs, and I tried to balance it out by painting his lower legs, and it's just kind of a hodgepodge. But he's a cool figure. A lot of plastic. So yeah, humans that have integrated with Transformers. And you know, of course, Spike ends up being, you know, almost like an alien diplomat kind of status. He ends up being, you know, a space guy. He lives on a moon of Cybertron. He is almost eaten by Unicron. He has a kid. He gets married, you know, and has Daniel. If you keep following the U.S. story, which I couldn't stand Headmasters. I hated it so much. That's where I really broke off from G1. But if you're into Headmasters, the U.S. version, not the Japanese one was totally different and a million times better. But the U.S. Headmasters, Daniel is like paralyzed. And they make him into a Headmaster in RC's head. So he ends up being inside of RC's head. Oh boy. So yeah, that was absolutely terrible. But yeah, can humans love Transformers? Can they fall in love with them? Can they have relationships with them? Could they get married or something? Could a human get turned into a Transformer? Could a Transformer get turned into a human? We have things like that addressed in the comic. To save Spike, they turn him into a Transformer, but it ends up being a horrible monster. And you know, it starts out with them watching Frankenstein, watching the Frankenstein monster. You know, of course it was Dr. Frankenstein, and so it was Frankenstein's monster. But today, if you say Frankenstein, no one thinks of the doctor, they just think of the monster, so the monster is called Frankenstein. But the point is, it was a Frankenstein episode. It started out with the Frankenstein stuff, then Spike is badly injured, and then they put his consciousness in a robot, and it ends up he's a monster. It doesn't work. Well, then also, there's a time where the Transformers have to look as though they're human. And so they get turned into human. And they've got some really expensive, rare action figures today that are for fans that are from that, where RC has like a super cute pink overalls, and Springer has a green outfit, and you see they all just look like they're like G.I. Joe character, only, you know, they're human, but they got turned into human because they're so I guess these kind of things could be there. You could say, you could have a Transformer, you know, maybe that'd be a great thing for Beachcomber, who's a peaceful Transformer who doesn't want to war, he doesn't want to fight with people and stuff like that. Maybe he would meet a hippie girl who loves animals and stuff and drives a VW bus everywhere, and, you know, has braids in her hair and listens to the Grateful Dead and stuff. And then he just says, okay, I'm in love with this girl, and he goes and just gets turned into a human male to be with her. Or maybe a girl falls in love with a robot, and she says, okay, I want to get turned into a robot too. I want to join your cause and be a transformer and go out in space and stuff, and be with this dude robot that I'm in love with. And so she gets turned into, something like that. Why not? The sky's the limit, or I guess the confines of the galaxy are the limit. The universe is the limit. Whatever you can come up with in your head, especially with something as bizarre as Transformers. And if you wonder if humans can love Transformers, well, humans do love Transformers. People are like, they love the characters in Transformers. Kids cried. And that brought another point out. When I said Transformers didn't bother me at all, I will admit, like the first time I ever watched the cartoon, I think I did get a little verklempt when Optimus Prime died. I won't say it scarred me, but it might have brought some dew to my eyes. Like, wow, that's really sad and really deep. But I think that's being human, But it didn't like what people are suggesting, that these movies might have like scarred people or something crazy like that. I really don't think so. But yeah, when I watch sad things in movies, they make you sad. And, Transformers was more of like a heavy metal robot war movie than it was, let's cry or be scarred forever because of this stuff. We little kids were shooting them at each other and throwing them across the room and blowing them up and getting out a screwdriver and tearing them apart and stuff. So in their own minds, they were going through those things with their toys. I don't think that it would have been that drastic of a difference from what was going on in a little kid's head playing with those toys than what was depicted on the screen. So yeah, humans love Transformers, and Transformers love humans.